trouble with the justice system. Ultimately, she was sentenced to 10 years in prison for the distribution of marijuana, 2 years for possession, running concurrently. Of course, this is a story out of the States. This isn't Canada, right? We don't put people in Canada in jail like that. But Harper, if he has his way, this is how Canada will be. I'm sure all of you are aware of the omnibus bill. It's going to make it even worse for families here in Canada. As I'm sure you're aware, this legislation that Harper has tried to pass off as the Safe Streets and Communities Act is a bloated piece of legislation compiling a hodgepodge of bills that have not passed prior sessions of Parliament. Among the pieces included in this bill is the introduction of mandatory minimums sentences in relation to marijuana crimes in Canada. It casts an extremely wide net and doesn't allow for judicial discretion that would allow the judge to consider the extenuating circumstances that people are in. I've been told that there's estimates hovering around the $9 billion mark for the actual cost of implementing this bill. This is by independent auditors. This will be a burden that rides on the back of all the Canadians and their children to pay for economically and socially as well. The irony is that by choosing to spend an exorbitant amount of money to cage people, the Conservative government, and by default the provincial governments, will have to cut into the spending on programs that were designed to keep kids out of gangs and off the streets. So how do we counter all of this deception and the fear that the government has been using to manipulate us and manipulate our families for over, 80 years? The first answer is truth. When my oldest son was 11, he took the DARE program. I signed the authorization in part because I felt it would look pretty odd to have one kid pulled from a program that was designed to keep kids off drugs. One day he came home and he told me that the DARE officer had come to his class and that they had talked about all sorts of drugs, including marijuana. And I talked with him about it. And he told me that the officer had told, that there was a student in the class that had told the officer that somebody in their family was using marijuana medicinally. And that the officer told the class that, I gotta get the exact words here, that anyone who says they are using marijuana for medicine is just using this as an excuse to get high. It was a pretty eye-opening experience for me. It really backed me in the corner. I couldn't let my kid go out there believing that, especially when his dad smoked marijuana, and that was part of the reason that his dad was there and available to him. This was the first of many honest conversations I had with him about the topic. Conveniently, this was at the same time that David Bratzer from LEAP first came out against the drug war, saying that it was a failure. I was able to explain to my son, using David Bratzer's words, to explain that so many people, so many adults don't even understand what's going on, that even within their own ranks they disagree. Of course, this put more pressure on us being honest with him, because 11-year-olds aren't really known for their discretion. So it insulated us even further from society around. Living out in the country away from the city, we were already insulated. Not being able to invite people into our home or really talk honestly about people, what's going on in our lives, because we didn't want to draw them into our thing. I finally made the right choice with my son to tell the truth, which he accepted far better than I had expected. The second answer to dealing with what's going on with our families is courage. We have to have the courage of our convictions. We have awesome and extreme examples of courage right here in BC. Ted Smiths, the Dana Larsons that have run and started cannabis dispensaries, which are so necessary, such important services. Mark Emery, who's now in Yazoo City, Mississippi, serving his sentence, is another example of grandiose courage. But courage doesn't have to work that way. We don't have to stand in front of a crowd and tell our life story. It can start with one person. The first people I talked to about my understanding of what was going on were actually my pastor, which led to many emails and many phone calls. And eventually that pastor went on to tell a sermon at his church about the problem of medical marijuana in Canada and the alienation that we're all facing when we're dealing with this issue. And the final answer, and probably the most difficult answer I have to offer today, is about unity. When you're working with a group of people that are as diverse as the world itself, it seems like an impossible kind of thing. But when I'm talking about unity, I'm not talking about linking up arms and singing Kumbaya in a circle and everybody's friends and we all get along. I get that we're not going to all get along. That's not what it's about. Unity is about supporting the common message. Just like in our families, we respect and support the common history that we share. My sister will always be my sister because our genes are shared and our history is shared. We grew up together and that history is always going to be there. And it's the same thing with the cannabis family. Our message is simple. Prohibition of cannabis isn't working and it's hurting our families and it's hurting our friends. And being united is a hard thing. There's different ideas. Simple steps to unity include encouraging others. Simple things like sending Dana a quick note. Hey, thanks for all the hard work, Dana. I appreciate it. Sending Ted a note. And not just the Ted Smiths and the Dana Larsons, but the Andrews, who works incredible hours putting together the digest for us. The Matts and the Debbies, who are working behind the scenes on our websites and listservs and pulling us all together. Unity isn't about always agreeing. We're going to have different opinions about how we should go about things. But just because we have a different opinion, it doesn't mean we need to tear each other down. And then I think that the most important thing and the most important message of unity is remembering that humans are messy. We're going to make mistakes. Being able to forgive each other and forgive ourselves is really important. For my family, prohibition has created many more problems than we deserved. Nobody went to jail, but after living for 7 years without having society involved in our home life, we were alienated from the world around us. We were struggling with health and bitter poverty, and the regular things that people struggle with, in addition to the constant reminder and the constant stress that at any moment somebody could knock on the door and the gig was up. Eventually, the way that it all finally broke us apart, last year, just over a year ago now, I left Mission, the farm, and pretty much everything, and came to Victoria. And it was a hard time. It's been a really rather rough year for me. But despite it all, and for me the message was that despite losing all that we had lost, because of all of this, finally, I was freed to speak for my family and for the thousands of families that are still hiding behind screen names because they're scared. And that's about all I have to say. Thank you.